Do you wish you could achieve greater success more easily? In this episode, I'm going to teach you how you can become one of the top 5% of highly successful people. Every single person is powerful, perfect as they are. And I believe we all have a role to play in making this world a better place. My purpose is to help people step into their power. I'm Gina Gardiner. I'm an international #1 best-selling author, empowerment and relationship coach, and I'm passionate about helping people just like you. Understanding how the quality of our thoughts governs the quality of our lives is vitally important if you want to create the very best quality of life for you and those you care about. Have you ever actively considered the quality of your thinking? Those who do are a tiny minority. So why is the quality of our thinking so important? Our thoughts create our emotions. The way we feel on a moment-to-moment basis is determined by the way we think. Our emotions drive our actions and our behaviours. Behaviours based on our unconscious patterns of thinking become habits. Researchers identified that 95% of our thinking is habitual. Our thoughts don't actually cross our conscious mind, so the thought stays at an entirely unconscious level. Minute by minute, emotions and actions are triggered by long-established patterns of thought. Our thoughts are governed by our beliefs about ourselves. The trouble is, for many people, that their beliefs about themselves and the world are both negative and limiting, and they often go unchallenged. Our lives are made up of thousands of little acts. Each of those is driven by our thinking. The impact of our thinking is far-reaching. For example, those who think they're lucky are observant in a very different way to those who think they are unlucky. So what does that mean for you? Your thinking is the engine which drives your behaviours, your perceptions, your reactions, and your language. It has the capacity to hold you back and keep you small, or to empower you and support you in creating a confident, happy, successful, and fulfilling life. Everything you do in life is a choice. What you do or say, when and how you do it, whether you do it at all. Every choice has consequences. And it's often when we fail to make a conscious choice that the consequences are their most far-reaching. So let's explore one example. Do you see yourself as lucky or unlucky? In one piece of research, they asked people to designate themselves along a continuum from very unlucky to very lucky. Each of them walked from the car park to the house, where different denominations of money had been hidden. Interestingly, the lucky people found the money, and the unlucky people didn't. So, what do you believe? Lucky or unlucky? Because if you believe you're unlucky, all of the research shows that you're actually less observant, less open to opportunity. The reality is that for the most part, you make your own luck. Now, every time there's an experience, a piece of music, a smell, it takes us back to a prior experience. Triggers can be positive, negative, or neutral. Most of us are completely unaware of our patterns of language and behaviour and what triggers them. Habitual thinkers interact with other habitual thinkers, and then there's potential for significant difficulty because positions become entrenched. We all interpret every situation in the light of our initial thoughts, habitual or mindful. When we're mindful, our points of reference can be changed by new information more easily, and it leads to different choices and therefore different outcomes. Think of the people who rub you up the wrong way. How often do they trigger unhelpful responses when you're dealing with them? What do you say when they upset you? Do you bite back and say something equally nasty? Bite your lip and say nothing? How often do you criticise others or yourself? Do you usually sit and simmer in the corner and expect other people to mind read that you're upset? Do you always want the last word? Is it important to you that you have to be seen or heard to be right? The only person who's responsible for your behaviour and your happiness is you. You must take responsibility of everything you say and do and what you don't. Einstein's definition of madness was to keep doing the same thing whilst expecting a different result, but we all do it. We do things harder, longer, louder, and more frequently, all the time, hoping that this time things will change and be better. Habitual thinking is at the heart of our behaviour. Think about a mum who's nagging her child to tidy the bedroom. She eventually becomes white noise, and she has the choice to keep nagging and being ignored or to do something different. Being mindful is the gateway to creating an empowered, fulfilling quality of life and the ability to sustain it even when life becomes challenging. The difference which determines our level of success is the way in which we think. Thinking about success falls into 3 distinct categories. I will fail, it's a done deal, and most people don't even bother trying. I fear I will fail, or I will succeed. Now, every decision is underpinned by the way in which you think about success. If you think you'll fail, it's done. You're unlikely to get started. If I don't try, then I won't be seen to fail. There's half-hearted action. I fear I will fail. Decisions based on that are going to be risk-averse, keeping you safe and in your comfort zone. Your level of success will be limited in direct proportion to your level of fear. Highly successful people know they're going to succeed. They've got absolute belief. They don't necessarily know how from the start, but they know they're going to do whatever it takes to achieve their goals. Think about famous inventors like Dyson and Edison. If they had actually given up before they had succeeded, well, we wouldn't have the range of vacuum cleaners. We wouldn't have electric lights. Babies are a great example. Just think how often they fall down when they're learning to walk. They don't see failure as an option. Ultimately, it's your choice to do things automatically without conscious thought or to think in a mindful way. Notice the patterns of your decision-making. Are they negative or positive? Learn to fail better. Learn to learn from your mistakes because failure offers the greatest opportunity to learn, develop and grow. Think about your own life. Haven't you learnt more when things have gone wrong rather than when things have gone perfectly? Enlightened leaders create a culture of development, not blame. They expect people to take responsibility for their actions or lack of them. And so long as people make the attempt and use the experience to learn and do better the next time, it's not deemed a failure. Enlightened people strive for excellence but don't expect perfection. The only true failures are failing to try in the first place and failing to learn the lesson the experience offers and repeating the mistake over again. I'd like to share with you a little of Carol's story. Carol came to me because she was stuck. She was not getting on with her business, she was unhappy, she had to go back and live with her mother as her relationship had broken down. Her mother, very critical, nothing good enough, and Carol responded by being very short-tempered. She withdrew to her bedroom and she became depressed and actually was doing nothing very much. Now, she was being triggered by a habitual response that every time her mother said something in a particular tone of voice, she bit back, and the whole situation deteriorated. It affected not only her private life, but it was having a really negative impact on her business. Her mind was on being unhappy rather than getting on with making her business grow. We looked at her mum's upbringing, and Carol, for the first time, recognised that her mum had had a very unhappy upbringing, and she recognised that her mum was unlikely to change. The only thing that would make a difference is if she began to respond differently. Instead of using things which were triggered by old patterns of behaviour and doing something unconsciously, that she had to do something different. And so she started to think about how she might respond in a different way. And we rehearsed it. We practiced things in a safe environment so that when the next time her mother triggered her, and it happened pretty often, she was prepared to do something different. So rather than her biting back and the two of them having an argument, she would say something like, "I'm sorry you feel that way. I do love you." And she started to give her mum a hug before going out or going to bed. Her mum was very stiff and unresponsive to start with. But over a few weeks, the relationship began to thaw. What was also interesting is not only was the relationship between Mum and Carol better, but Carol's mind, instead of being taken up with how unfair life was and how much her mum was making her miserable, she had the headspace to actually concentrate on her business, which is now thriving. So, how often are you caught up in habitual ways of responding to people that end up in something very negative, rather than taking a step back and thinking consciously, what could I do to make this situation better? So, I'll leave that with you. Just think about your own lives. How can you use those principles to make your life better? It's time to look at the mailbag and some questions about habitual thinking. How do I know when I'm being triggered by old stuff? As I've shared with you, most people have no idea that they're caught up in a cycle of habitual thinking. You have a huge advantage because you're now aware how important it is to think consciously about the way in which you think. Awareness is the first vital step. Over the next few days, be aware of the patterns of your responses to situations and to other people. The easiest patterns to spot are those where your response is significant. Consider those people who you find a challenge. What do they do or say which triggers you? And what's your usual response? Once you're aware, you can choose to carry on with the same old, or you can change things. It's entirely up to you. So next, what's the best way to get someone else to change? Well, the only person you're responsible for is you. You can't change someone else. However, you can change the way in which you respond to them. When you maintain that change in the way that you interact, over time it will often elicit a change in the other person, but there are no guarantees. Lastly, trying to change the way I react feels overwhelming. How can I make it easier? Remember, it's all about small steps taken consistently. Rather than trying to do everything at once, choose just one or two areas to work on. I'd suggest one which is totally about you, and then perhaps one around a relationship which is personal or professional, and that one that you wish was more positive. To start with, simply be aware and notice how you habitually deal with things. Consider how you might respond more positively. Over the following days, try out the new way of responding and notice how you feel. Remember, it may feel a bit unfamiliar, like a new pair of shoes. Notice the response of others. Don't expect others to respond immediately. It does take time and some consistency, but it can work really well. I want to leave you with 3 things which, if you take them on board, have the capacity to make an incredible difference to the quality of your thinking and your life. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get the same result. But how often are you involved in doing things in a particular way simply because you've always done so? It's a really common pattern. It feels familiar and safe. We stay in our comfort zone. Remember Einstein's definition of madness? There are times when we all engage in thinking without engaging our consciousness. Start to become more aware of the quality of your thinking. The more you do it, the easier it will be. Next, if you want to create change, you have to take action. Beware of getting stuck in the quicksand of trying. It's really easy to think that we are trying without actually taking any action. Choose to do it or not. But be aware of the choice and why you're making it. Remember, it's not the grand gesture which makes the biggest difference, but small actions taken consistently over time. And lastly, the only true failures are either the failure to make the attempt or to fail to learn from the experience. If you don't give something a go, you'll never know if you can succeed. Highly successful people are prepared to be uncomfortable, while those who fail to succeed would rather stay in their comfort zone and give up any chance of success. You'll learn far more when things don't go perfectly, so long as you choose to look for the learning. It's been a real pleasure to be with you today, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next programme, where we're going to explore the theme of beliefs. Do yours limit or empower you? Discover the most important pathways to confidence and fulfilment, and why those who harness it live an extraordinary life. Until then, be genuinely you. Want to learn more? Grab a copy of my #1 best-selling book, Thriving Not Surviving: The 5 Secret Pathways to Happiness, Success and Fulfillment, on Amazon or wherever good books are sold.